She was only 19, a nun in training, a soul full of dreams, laughter, and unwavering faith. And one night, she vanished. The next morning, her body was found floating in the convent well. This is the chilling true story of Sister Abhaya, a tale of faith, betrayal, and a 28-year fight for justice that shook India to its core. March 27, 1992, Kottayam, Kerala, India. At the break of dawn, the peaceful halls of St. Pius XI convent were pierced by a scream. A nun had gone to fetch water and saw something horrifying. Floating in the well was the body of a young girl, her white habit soaked, her face ghostly pale. It was Sister Abhaya. She was smart, devout, and full of promise. She had been studying late into the night for an exam. She had left her room to get a drink of water. She never came back. By noon, police ruled her death a suicide. Case closed. But something didn't add up. Her parents were adamant. Abhaya was not suicidal. She had no reason to take her own life. Friends described her as cheerful, dedicated, and future-focused. And then came the inconsistencies. Her slippers were found neatly placed near the kitchen. The kitchen fridge was open. Her body had multiple head injuries, unexplained. Crucial evidence was ignored or tampered with. Locals and activists demanded answers. The initial investigation by the local police was suspiciously swift and sloppy. The case was handed over to the crime branch. Then, suddenly, it was closed again as a suicide. But the public wasn't done. Neither was justice. Enter the CBI. After relentless pressure, India's premier investigation agency, the CBI, Central Bureau of Investigation, took over. What they uncovered was darker than anyone imagined. According to witnesses and later court findings, Sister Abhaya had walked in on something she wasn't meant to see. 2 priests and a nun in a compromising situation in the convent kitchen. She turned, she ran, but she never made it back to her room. She was struck in the head twice. Then her unconscious body was dumped in the well. And for nearly 3 decades, the truth was buried deeper than the waters that had taken her life. A case buried in silence. The cover-up was massive. Evidence went missing. Medical reports were tampered with. Even the post-mortem was manipulated. One forensic expert who refused to change her findings was threatened and transferred. For years, the case zigzagged through legal limbo. Witnesses were silenced. Files disappeared. Accused clergy were protected, and every time the case gained momentum, it mysteriously stalled. But a few voices never gave up. Human rights activists, journalists, and a retired police officer named Varghese P. Thomas, who resigned in protest after being asked to write the case off as suicide. He knew what he saw, and he refused to lie. Justice at last. In 2020, 28 years later, a CBI court delivered its verdict. Father Thomas Kator and Sister Sefi were found guilty of the murder of Sister Abhaya. They were sentenced to life imprisonment. It was a moment of reckoning not just for the church, but for the Indian legal system. And for Sister Abhaya, who had been denied a voice in life, it was a long-delayed cry for justice finally heard. Why it still matters. This isn't just a story about one young woman's tragic death. It's about power, silence, and the institutions that fail the very people they vow to protect. Sister Abhaya's case reminds us that truth, no matter how deeply buried, has a way of surfacing, even if it takes decades. Her name still echoes in the hearts of those who believe in justice, because she deserved to live, she deserved to dream, and she deserved better. The web of silence and suspicion. The investigation was flawed from the very beginning. Local police reportedly tampered with evidence. Key photos and documents went missing. And most shockingly, the autopsy report failed to clearly identify any signs of struggle, until later investigations proved otherwise. Public pressure forced the CBI, Central Bureau of Investigation, to take over the case, but even they hit roadblocks. Over the years, multiple CBI officers handled the file, and each time, the conclusion changed. First suicide, then homicide, then back to suicide. But behind the scenes, whispers grew louder. It was rumored that powerful individuals within the church were involved, and that they were influencing the investigation. And then, a former CBI officer made a bold claim. that he was transferred because he got too close to the truth. What was that truth? And why was everyone trying so hard to bury it? A shocking turn, the truth surfaces. 2008, 16 years after Sister Abhaya's death. A breakthrough shattered the silence. 3 names stunned the nation: Father Thomas Couture, Father Jose Puthricayo, Sister Sefi, respected members of the church now prime suspects. According to the CBI, the truth was chilling. On that fateful night, Abhaya woke early to study. Around 4:15 a.m., she walked to the kitchen for a drink of water. What she saw changed everything. She reportedly stumbled upon the 2 priests and Sister Sefi. In a compromising situation, startled, scared, she turned to leave. But they couldn't let her. In a panic, they attacked. A blunt weapon, possibly an axe, cracked against her skull. Unconscious, bleeding, betrayed, they dumped her body into the convent well. The ultimate betrayal by the very people she trusted most. People of faith, mentors, murderers. Justice delayed but not denied. The arrests sent shockwaves across the country. But justice didn't come easy. For years, the case dragged. Witnesses turned hostile, evidence disappeared. And powerful religious institutions were accused of shielding the accused. It felt like the truth would never come to light. But then, December 2020, a special CBI court in Kerala delivered its verdict. Father Thomas Couture and Sister Sefi, guilty of murder, sentenced to life imprisonment. After 28 years of silence, manipulation, and grief, justice was finally served. A moment of truth. A moment of justice. And for Sister Abhaya, a voice at last. Justice, delayed but not denied. The arrests sparked national outrage, but even then, justice moved slowly. The case dragged on for over a decade, bouncing between courts. Powerful religious institutions allegedly tried to shield the accused. Witnesses turned hostile, evidence was questioned. Many began to believe the case would never be solved. But in December 2020, the wait was finally over. After 28 long years, a special CBI court in Kerala pronounced its judgment. Father Thomas Couture and Sister Sefi were found guilty of the cold-blooded murder of Sister Abhaya. They were sentenced to life imprisonment. The verdict was a moment of closure, not just for Abhaya's parents who had died without seeing justice, but for an entire nation that had followed this painful case for nearly 3 decades. The legacy of Sister Abhaya's fight. Sister Abhaya's story is not just a murder case. It's a mirror, a dark reflection of what happens when power goes unchecked, and when silence becomes a weapon. What began as a mysterious death inside the walls of a convent slowly unraveled into one of the most haunting cases in India's legal history. She was just 19, a young woman devoted to faith, discipline, and a life of purpose. She wasn't seeking justice. She wasn't trying to challenge authority. All she did was wake up early to study. And that innocent moment, walking into the kitchen at 4:15 in the morning, changed everything. In that single instant, she became a threat, a witness, a liability. The forces she unintentionally stood against were powerful, not just within the church, but embedded deep in systems meant to protect the innocent. For 28 years, her case was buried under red tape. Corruption, fear, and complicity. The well where she was discarded became a metaphor, a silent grave for the truth. But truth has a way of rising. It took brave journalists, tireless activists, honest investigators, and an unrelenting public to keep the flame alive, to ask the questions others wanted to bury, to say her name when others tried to forget. And finally, the truth broke through. Justice arrived late, yes, but it arrived. Sister Abhaya never lived to tell her story, but her silence spoke volumes, and her case will be remembered as a symbol of resilience, a testimony that justice can still be found, even in the deepest darkness. So the next time you hear of a cold case, a forgotten file, a young voice drowned by power, remember her. Remember Sister Abhaya, not just as a victim, but as a symbol of truth that refused to die. Outro, call to action. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe to the channel. We bring you real stories of justice, betrayal, courage, and truth. And we want to hear from you. Do you think justice was truly served in the end? Or did the system fail Sister Abhaya when she needed it the most? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, stay aware, stay curious, and never stop asking questions.